Good morning and welcome to Navigating OCD, podcast where we cover all things OCD. Now, as always, I'm not a medical professional. I am just someone who is sharing their OCD recovery journey, how I've got to the point that I'm at now, the tips and tricks and lessons that I've learned along the way. Okay, so we're on episode 3. Now, today I thought I would cover a little bit more on different types of OCD subtypes and also navigating like relapses and setbacks. Now, I know I was thinking of this, just some of this content might be a bit simple for some people that are a bit further along the recovery journey. But I thought if I could spend these first few episodes covering the basics, then people who are just starting their journey can listen to those and kind of at least learn what the different terms are that I'm using. Just the complete and utter back to basics, strip back, raw beginning of the OCD recovery journey. And then maybe once I've got to episode 5, I can start going a bit deeper into the more niche parts of the journey, and the more like nitty gritty areas that maybe come into the recovery process a bit further along. So I apologise for any of you that think maybe these first few episodes I'm just going over the basics, but I thought that would probably be the best way to organise it. Because if someone came along and was like, I don't know anything about OCD, I can just say, start at episode 1, and you'll learn some of those basics. And then as we go along, we'll cover more of the niche topics. Okay, so let's start with what an OCD subtype is. I mentioned last week, when someone talks about OCD, we tend to just think, if you don't know anything about the topic at all, that they don't like germs, they're a bit of a perfectionist, they like cleaning. This is the typical stereotype, right? And that is so far from the truth. OCD is actually usually broken up into different subtypes, which are basically different categories of what OCD can fall into. Now, I just want to preface this by saying OCD can be about absolutely anything. Your theme doesn't need to fall into one of these subtypes perfectly. They're just kind of used because the most common OCD themes tend to fall into these, but not everyone's theme is going to fall into these perfectly. And please be aware that trying to find out if your theme does fit into one of these perfectly can actually be a compulsion, because you're trying to almost prove to yourself that it definitely is OCD. So just keep that in mind as I'm talking. If you think you could be listening to this bit of the episode because you're trying to make sure that your OCD does fit into a subtype, then tune out because you're doing a compulsion. So yeah, that's a little preface before I go into it. But yeah, so there's so many different OCD subtypes. I'll maybe go through a few of the more common ones, and break those down a little bit today about how they could show up in different people's lives. So the first subtype we'll cover today is harm OCD. So harm OCD usually shows up as the fear of hurting oneself or hurting another person, physically, or it could even be mentally. It's not going to just be a physical manifestation. Now, it could show up in so many ways. It could be through like intrusive thoughts. It could be through intrusive images. So maybe seeing yourself hurt someone. You might have intrusive urges and intrusive sensations that come along with those as well, which kind of increase the realness factor. And that really, I think intrusive urges, it just makes it feel so much more petrifying. I get a lot of you guys sending messages about intrusive urges because it really does up that realness factor. So when we have harm OCD, we might avoid things like knives, being around people, being around children, um, being around medication, food, anything that we think we could harm someone by doing. It could show up in so many ways. But I know, like, hiding knives and things like that, like not being putting knives away in the kitchen so that they can't be out because we're scared that we might hurt someone with them. Um, these are quite common ways for them to show up, but it could be like running someone over. Honestly, any way that OCD is showing up that you feel like you could harm someone and it feels really real, that will probably fall under the category of harm OCD. Now, when we're doing these things, so with harm OCD, if you are finding yourself avoiding going certain places because you think, what if you hurt someone there or hurt yourself there? Avoiding like opening windows because you think, what if you jump out or if you push someone out? Or avoiding, like I said, using knives. All this kind of behaviour is actually fueling the OCD cycle. Now, I know it feels like you're doing these things from a safety perspective because it feels so irresponsible not to do these things because there's always that what if. What if I did hurt someone? What if I've hurt someone in the past and I can't remember? What if I'm going to hurt someone? It's not going to be present. It can be past. It can be past, present, or future. But all these safety behaviours that we're doing with harm OCD, they're actually fueling the cycle, and we really need to cut them out. So if you are doing things like not going certain places as part of your recovery, what you need to do is actually go to those places. Same with objects or anything like that you think you might hurt someone with. Instead of avoiding using those objects, you actually have to lean into it. So that's just like a quick cover of how harm OCD most commonly shows up for people. Okay, next, let's talk about false memory / real event, because these two can overlap, but they are a little bit different. So real event OCD is when you become obsessed by something that has actually occurred. And this one can be tricky for people because we feel like if it has actually occurred, it's different to other OCD themes. Now, false memory can be similar. So it can latch to a real event that has happened, but tweak it to the point that you don't know, maybe did something else happen there and I just can't remember it. Or it could show up as a memory in your mind that you're not sure if it is a real memory, if it's a dream, did it really happen? And no matter if it's a real event or a false memory, you become obsessed over what happened, trying to work it out, maybe asking other people who were there what really happened. You're really gaining reassurance of this circumstance. And I can't stress enough, even if what you experienced is a real event, even if you've been able to work that out and you know for certain it's a real event, you are still experiencing OCD over it, and you still need to work on the OCD. You still need to work on your recovery. Don't let the fact that it's a real event let you stay in this cycle of chronic guilt and OCD, compulsions and obsessions. Don't let it keep you there, because OCD usually has still warped whatever the theme is. It's usually making you see it differently. It's attaching meaning that maybe doesn't need to be there. And I don't want to say this in a reassurance way, but I just know with real event OCD, it can feel different for a lot of people. But you still need to, no matter how it feels, no matter what OCD is telling you, you still have to work on your recovery, because OCD is still the central problem there. Now, when you have false memory / real event, you may be doing a lot of behaviours, like I said, asking other people who were there for reassurance, maybe looking back at pictures of the event if you have any photos, checking diaries. You may do future things. So you may record yourself when you're going places or things like that to prevent anything happening due to false memories. All these behaviours, same as harm OCD, these are things that are keeping you stuck. So all these are compulsive behaviours that you want to eventually cut out. Now, that's a very quick and rushed discussion on false memory / real event OCD. But I thought I'd touch on that at least today because I know it's something that a lot of people deal with. And I have also dealt with that type of OCD. And I know how hard and difficult it can be. Okay, next one is sexual orientation OCD, otherwise known as like HOCD, so homosexual OCD, or SOOCD, obviously sexual orientation OCD. I get a lot of messages from you guys who are struggling with this. So this is when you become obsessed with your sexual orientation, doubting if you are actually straight, thinking maybe I'm gay, maybe I'm bisexual. This can overlap with a lot of relationship OCD as well, for people who are in maybe committed relationships and they start to doubt, maybe am I actually straight, or am I gay, or the other way around, however it would work, show up for them. And then they can start worrying that they have to break up with their partner, etc. So yeah, this can overlap. So that's something to keep in mind. But like I said at the beginning, it doesn't matter how your theme falls. The only reason I'm really mentioning how this can overlap is because you may have your core fear, that is your OCD, may actually be related more to losing your partner. Because if you feel like, what if I'm gay? This means I can't be with my partner anymore. And I think it's always good to get to our core fears and see, not compulsively, by the way, or reassurance way, but it's good for us to know where the core fear is lying. So it might be lying in a place where you have more fear about losing your relationship rather than actually having a different sexual orientation. So sexual orientation OCD can show up in so many ways. It could be obviously doubts about your sexual orientation. You may be scared to watch certain programs or go to certain places, maybe like a gay bar, or like watching a program where there's like a bisexual character or a gay character or something like that. And you become obsessed that what if you are actually gay, or you have a different sexual orientation to what you currently think that you are. And then you might start avoiding things. You might start doing compulsions like mentally checking your attraction to different people. And once again, all of this is fueling the cycle. So these are all kind of the behaviours, same as with the false memory OCD and the harm OCD. These are all the behaviours that we want to start cutting out because they're keeping that cycle alive. So next I'm going to talk about contamination OCD. So this is the most common OCD that we see, in movies, in TV shows, but it actually still shows up slightly different than how it's presented a lot of the time. So a lot of the time it's presented from people liking to have things neat and tidy, whereas actually real contamination OCD is coming from a fearful place. People feeling that they have to because of what would happen if they don't. So a lot of the time it might be fears of germs or being contaminated. Now, that doesn't actually have to be just physically. You can also fear that you're being morally contaminated. So, for example, someone may fear that something isn't clean enough, and because of that, their children might get like an illness because of the germs on there. Or they may fear being too close to someone who they think is a bad person because they think they're going to get morally contaminated by that person. So it hasn't just got to be about germs, even though a lot of it can be. It can be other types of contamination as well. So they might find themselves avoiding places they think are dirty, maybe avoiding cooking because they're worried in case they accidentally contaminate the food and hurt people, which once again could maybe also overlap into harm OCD. They may wash their hands and I'm not just talking like a little bit of hand washing, I'm talking like wash their hands to an extreme because they're so scared of catching like a little germ and contaminating themselves and getting poorly and dying or whatever. So yeah, their compulsions can show up in all these different ways. And it is often dismissed as, oh, they just like things clean. But it's not coming from a place, like I said at the beginning, of liking to have a tidy home and liking to have things clean and feeling more refreshed in a clean home. It's actually the complete opposite. So it's coming from a place of extreme anxiety, feeling like you have to do these things or else something bad is going to happen. And that's a key difference in OCD that I think is often overlooked by a lot of society that doesn't really understand OCD, that it's coming from fear and this need, like it's not even a need, like it feels like you have to do it. It's not a choice. It feels like it's 100% you have to do it. So yeah, that's contamination OCD. Now, last one I am going to cover today is relationship OCD. So this is another really common one, and I see this a lot. I get a lot of messages about this. So relationship OCD can latch to absolutely any relationship in your life. Obviously, most commonly latches to like romantic relationships in your partner, but it can also latch to friends, family, pets, and it shows up in the form a lot of doubts around that relationship. So if it was a romantic relationship, it might be, do I actually love my partner? What if I don't love them? Is this the right person for me? Now, it's not, like I've said before, it's not a normal relationship doubt. It's to an extreme and it kind of becomes all consuming. It could be about a pet. So you could be so scared you're going to hurt your pet, which once again could overlap into harm OCD. And a lot of your compulsions may be seeking reassurance from other people. So, are you sure? Asking people, are you sure I'm in the right relationship? Are you sure I won't hurt my pet? Are you sure I didn't do anything wrong? Are you sure I didn't say the wrong thing to my friend and I've upset them? You might find yourself comparing your relationship to other relationships and really analysing in detail how you feel about this person. And don't forget, OCD mimics everything. So you can't trust like your feelings, and this is for all OCD themes. You can't trust, as much as you can't trust your thoughts with OCD, you can't trust your feelings, because OCD will completely take away the way you feel about something or someone. And as a normal human, we tend to use our feelings to gauge how we feel. I know that's not the greatest explanation, but that's what we do. But with OCD, we cannot do that. those are gone. It's thrown out the window. And like our intuition, and I do say this a lot, I feel like OCD, as much as it hijacks your thoughts and feelings, it hijacks our intuition as well. And we use that a lot of the time, our gut feeling as a human being. But I think with OCD, we can't do that. It's gone. And we kind of have to, I just kind of accepted that now. I mean, as I've gone more through recovery, I can trust my gut a bit more. But a lot of the time, I know not to trust that because OCD kind of latch to it. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, we can't use that in a lot of our OCD compulsions come from looking at our feelings and looking at our gut. But OCD will completely take that away. And like I said before, a lot of the time I'm talking about OCD, I think a lot of people could think, oh, well, I have that. Like, obviously, it's normal to have a doubt about like a friendship or a relationship. But OCD doubts go far, 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 far beyond everyday normal human doubts. It's incomparable, but I don't know how to explain it other than saying it's like an extreme version. It's all consuming. You don't have, like I said, you don't have your feelings anymore. You don't have your memories. You don't have any of these things to trust because OCD has taken over them all. So it's not just like a normal doubt because we all have them. It's part of being like a human being. It's a lot. It's very, very different. And I can't stress that enough because sometimes I put things on like my Instagram page and I think a lot of people could apply it to themselves, but it's very different to a normal human doubt, whatever category it falls into. Okay, so they're the 5 themes I'm going to cover today. Maybe next episode I'll cover a few more because there's so many more. So like moral scrupulosity, which can also overlap into religious OCD, health OCD, existential OCD, sensory motor OCD. Honestly, there's so many. But I'll keep it for those 5 today. And what I'm going to finish off by talking about for the last maybe 5-10 minutes is setbacks and relapses. Because setbacks and relapses with OCD can feel like the end of the world. And they are going to happen. Like no one is going to start the recovery journey and it's just going to go smooth sailing, straightforward, gradual incline, gradual progress, and then you're at the end. OCD recovery doesn't work like that. You're going to go up, down, forwards, all the way back to the beginning. You're going to feel like, oh my God, I don't have OCD anymore. Then 5 minutes later, you're going to think, I've never made any progress at all on this recovery journey. That's how it works. And accepting that, knowing that at the beginning, I think is really important so that then when we do have these setbacks, we can look at it and be like, okay, this was highly likely to happen as part of my recovery journey. And even though it's not ideal, we'll get back on that horse anyway and carry on doing what we've learned so far anyway. Relapses can come on a lot of the time by maybe life changes or if you've experienced something that's really triggered you. So my worst relapse happened after I moved house. It was almost as bad, actually, potentially even worse than the very first time my OCD latched. Not the first time it latched, the first time it latched chronically. I just want to clarify that. The only thing that probably made it slightly better is that I already had experience in recovery and knowing what OCD was. First time round, I didn't. But the actual pain and the relapse was probably just as bad, if not worse. If you don't already know, so OCD loves a life change, and it will latch onto that. It doesn't even have to latch onto the theme. it can just, the life change in general can just trigger OCD to show up. So you could have a life change, like a new job, new house, children, or whatever it is. And that could trigger harm OCD. It's not got to be linked to what the life change is. It just change. OCD loves a bit of change. It's like, this is my opportunity to shine and show up. So yeah, I experienced my worst relapse when I moved house. So if you have had a change and in hindsight can see, like if you at the time, if you're like, why has my OCD got so much worse? That's usually why. And in the first episode, I talked about when my OCD originally latched, and that's when I actually I was going traveling. I'll go over the story again because I went over it in quite a lot of detail in the first episode. But I was going traveling at the time, so obviously that's a big life change. And that's a week before I left. That's when my OCD first latched chronically. So yeah, it loves these kind of things, and it's likely that a relapse or a setback will come with them. Now, when we have a relapse or a setback, we're going to be fully inundated with thoughts. It's going to feel 100% real. You're going to feel like you did all the wrong things when you was working on recovery, and that you should actually have been focusing on the content itself, because OCD loves to tell us that. So it'll tell us, no, you were being irresponsible. You shouldn't have been working on recovery. What you should actually have been doing is trying to solve this issue, whatever the issue OCD is presenting to you. Whereas that's just OCD trying to pull you back into that cycle. So no matter what it tells you, honestly, even if you feel like, even if there's only 0.0001% of you that thinks it might still be OCD, no matter what it tells you, go with that 0.0001% and still treat it like OCD. Because I kind of look at it like this: recovery is the most important thing in my life by far. And I can't, not that I can't, that's the wrong word, but other things in my life can't flourish, and I can't enjoy them as much unless I'm putting my all into recovery. Because OCD does kind of loves to put a doom and gloom on everything else in our life. So to me, recovery is the most important thing. So even if there's only in my head, even if there's only a 0.0001% chance that what I'm experiencing is OCD, and every other part of me thinks that it's real, I am going to always lean into that 0.0001% chance. And I'm going to treat it as OCD, and I'm going to take the risk that I'm being irresponsible. And I'm not saying this is easy. That has took me years to get to that point. At the beginning, every part of you wants to do what OCD says. OCD will say, it's not OCD, this is real, you have to do what I say or else you're a terrible person, and all this kind of stuff. And it's taken me a long time, but now, as scary as it can still be, I always, well, I'm not going to say always, because obviously I'm a human and slip up, but 99.9% of the time, I try and always lean into taking the risk that it is OCD, and I'm not going to do what OCD tells us. So that's a bit of advice just from my journey that I'd maybe impart onto anyone else going through a setback, that OCD is going to tell you all these things, but try to lean into that tiny, tiny part of you that might still think, okay, it could be OCD. It could, and I'm going to continue with my recovery journey anyway. And I think about setbacks, that, or like triggers, say whatever you've experienced that's caused your OCD to flare up. I think about it like this: if that ability for it to flare up was there, it was always going to happen sooner or later. And all it's doing is showing you that there's another area of your OCD that you still need to work on. Even if you've worked on it loads, you've worked on it like 90%, there's still that 10% there for you to work on. And as much as I'm not saying it's nice, we don't want it to happen, it feels awful, It's just another area or an area for you to further work on. It might not be another one. It could be an old thing coming back up. And it was always going to happen at some point, because that ability was still there. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, the setback might not come at the most convenient time, but it's a time that it can show you this is an area that you can still grow in. Now, I know I say all this stuff and I know that it can sound like I'm acting like it's easy. It's not. OCD is by far the hardest thing in the whole entire world that I've ever had to experience. And the stuff that I'm saying has come from 4 years of living with and dealing with and learning and overcoming OCD. It hasn't been a perfect journey for me. I have messed up thousands of times, literally thousands, more than thousands, probably hundreds of thousands. This advice has only come after so many mess ups, my end, and getting to where I am now, which I know I've said this before. This is what I would have wished for 4 years ago. Not wished for, this is what I could only ever have dreamt of. And my point being with all this, I know I've slightly gone off track, but my point being is that you might not handle setbacks or relapses or whatever perfectly, and to not beat yourself up about that. Do the best that you can by far, work the hardest that you can, put your most into recovery, but you're still going to probably mess up sometimes. I'm 4 years in, I still mess up. There's still compulsions I'm working on. And this is a hard road to walk. And as much as I want you to put your all into recovery and try your best, I also don't want you to beat yourself up if there's something that you don't do right or a compulsion you do slip up on, or OCD does suck you back into the cycle and you've got to claw yourself back out again, because this is a really, really hard journey to walk. Unless you've walked it, I don't think anyone could ever understand how it feels or what the experience is like. So yeah, I want you to work as hard as possible, but I also want you to have self-compassion, because I think that is really important when we're already getting beaten up black and blue by OCD. We need to be kind of kind to ourselves as well. So yeah, that is all for today. Next episode, like I said, I'll talk about a few more themes. So we can go through some more subtypes, and then I'll probably go over something else at the end, like I have here, gone over relapses and stuff. And then at least I'll have worked through a lot of the basics for anyone who's at the beginning. I've talked over subtypes, what OCD is, what OCD isn't, mix. Maybe I'll cover like what exposures are, and what like response prevention is as well. Maybe I'll do that next episode. And then after that, I can start delving in a little bit deeper, because at least I'll have covered the basics for any newbies on the journey. Okay, so that's it for today. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, it's at navigating.ocd. There's a really nice community over there. And I love speaking to you all over there. So please feel free to follow me. And I will see you all next Sunday. Bye.